start the recording. All right. I think we can, wait the audience a couple of minutes more, then, let's get started.
How many people do you think would be attending today?
I think about 10, 12. Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's kind of some seminar type talk. So. Maybe we can start at 12:05 out here.
Yeah, whenever you prefer. I'm flexible.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kijin Song, and I'm a postdoc researcher in the Urban Information Lab in the School of Architecture at UT Austin. Welcome to our lightning talk series on smart city research. So this talk series is funded by the UT's Good System Project. So we invite speakers from academia, industry, and communities to share the research and our needs related to the smart cities. So if you are interested in the topic, then please feel free to visit our website for our past talk and other activities at smartcity.tech.utexas.edu. So today we're very excited to have Dr. Federico Cugurullo as our guest speaker. So Dr. Cugurullo is an assistant professor in smart and sustainable urbanism at Trinity College, Dublin. His research is positioned at the intersections of urban geography, political philosophy, and experimental urbanism, and explores how artificial intelligence is influencing urban governance and planning, thereby impacting the sustainability of the cities. Theoretically, Federico is interested in unpacking the notion of AI from the urbanistic perspective and in fleshing out the conceptual implications of AI-mediated urban spaces, such as the end of the city hypothesis introduced in his monograph. Empirically, he has done extensive research in the Middle East and Southeast Asia on many experimental cities, including the Masdar City, Hong Kong, and the Line. Federico is the author of the Frankenstein Urbanism and a co-editor of Artificial Intelligence and the City. So today, he will talk about artificial intelligence and the city, focusing on the urbanistic perspectives on the AI. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Dr. Cugurullo.
Thanks a lot for this amazing introduction, for the kind invitation, and thank you all for attending this seminar. Today we're gonna explore the intersection between the development of artificial intelligence and the development of cities. And so on the one hand, we're going to look at how the development of AI is impacting on the city, transforming its governance, influencing its sustainability. But on the other hand, we're going to look at how the city is influencing artificial intelligences. And so we're going to look at the city in this context, not as a passive recipient of new technologies. Instead, we're going to look at the city as a determinant, as one of the main determinants of AI development nowadays. And the first point that I want to make as part of this presentation is that the nature of AI is by and large, urban. There are different definitions, different understandings of AI, and perhaps this is something that we can talk about during the Q&A later. But in essence, I would argue that the nature of AI is urban for three main reasons. First, because AI requires physical environments to act upon. And most of the time, these environments are urban spaces, whether we're talking about an autonomous car that needs public roads to operate, or whether we're looking at an algorithm that is assessing the market value of a property. The spaces that AI experiences are very frequently urban spaces. Also, we can think of AI as agent, meaning that AI engages in many, many different activities. And so if we look at where these activities are taking place, the city is the space where AI engages in a plethora of activities. And that's because we all know cities encapsulate an increasing proportion and range of activities on our planet. We're talking about social activities, economic, financial activities, political activities, in essence, human activities. And because most of us live and operate in the city, it is in cities that the majority of our activities are taking place. And so the moment AI has to engage in a social activity, you can think about Alexa, Amazon Alexa, that interacts with people in domestic spaces. Or you can think about commercial activities. You can think about service robots that operate at a restaurant. So these social activities, these commercial activities are by and large taking place in urban spaces, in cities. And so AIs, they have to interact with urban systems in order to engage in those activities they are designed for. Last but not least, I would argue that the development of AI largely depends on urban development. And so in other words, we would not have AI development these days if it wasn't for urban development. And that's because AI grows by means of data. AI needs so-called big data in order to become intelligent, in order to develop its own intelligence. And much of this data is coming from the city. And that's because urban spaces are massive generators of data. So it is a matter of quantity. Think about, again, all the social, economic, cultural, and political activities that are taking place in all the cities in the world as we speak. So all these activities are generating a lot of information, a lot of data. So through processes of machine learning, AI is absorbing much of these data, and in so doing, it is developing its intelligence. And so it is a matter of quantity, but it is also a matter of quality, because the data that we find in the city is real life data. which is different compared to data sets that are curated by computer scientists in a lab or just sitting in front of a computer, data that is labeled by computer scientists, photographs, videos. That's one kind of data, but the data that we're talking about in the city is real life information. It is about activities that are actually taking place in the city, which is, a precious source of information for a number of artificial intelligences. So autonomous vehicles that traverse real life urban spaces, and they can see what is happening in the city. It is then that they begin to make sense of how transportation in that instance actually works. What I would argue next is that the influence that AI has on the city is leading to the formation of a different kind of urbanism that we're going to refer to as an AI urbanism, which departs from a smart urbanism. So there are connections between smart urbanism and AI urbanism, but I would argue that AI urbanism is different compared to traditional smart city initiatives for three main reasons that we can observe by looking at three interconnected axes, namely function, presence, and agency. We're going to look at these three axes one by one. I argue that these three axes represent aspects of AI urbanism that are already very much present in the contemporary city. And later we're going to look at the emergence of a fourth axis, the discourse underpinning smart and AI urbanism and how this is changing. So first we're going to look at the issue of function. So what is the function of technology in smart versus AI urbanism? Now, when we look at the smart city, technology is by and large employed to count and calculate a number of urban metabolic processes. For example, smart technologies are employed to quantify how much energy a building is consuming, how much energy an entire city needs, also how many people are using a subway. And so smart technologies in these terms count, they calculate, they quantify. In contrast, artificial intelligences operating in the city, which is what I call urban AI is producing an account of urban phenomena. And so it sounds quite similar, counting and accounting, but the difference is significant. And so an account is essentially an explanation. It is an explanation of how and why certain things occur in cities. And we can think of Palantir as an example. So Palantir is an artificial intelligence technology, a predictive technology that in theory is capable of predicting who is going to commit a crime in the city, in what areas of the city, what kind of dynamics are going to take place the moment crimes will occur. And so, you can see that this is not about quantifying crime in the city. So how many criminal activities will take place in the city. This is about providing an explanation of crime in the city. And so urban AI is producing explanatory models that are akin to narratives. And a narrative is, simply put, a basic form of storytelling. And again, if you think about the case of Palantir, we have some of the key elements of any archetypical story: the where, the who, the how. These are basic stories, but storytelling is, in a way, a form of thinking. It is a way that, we humans ourselves, we employ to make sense of the reality around us. And although I'm not arguing that AIs nowadays are conscious and capable of thinking like we do, I am arguing instead that these AIs, through the development of basic narratives, they are showing a rudimentary form of thinking that was completely absent in traditional smart cities. So it is an important element of novelty that is emerging in AI urbanism these days. Next is presence. So the space where technology operates. And my argument is that smart city technologies usually are installed in confined spaces, in remote infrastructures that are detached from us. They are detached from human encounters. For example, this is an online talk, so I don't know exactly where you are right now, but I would imagine that you're probably in a city, in an urban space, and I'm also pretty sure that because you're able to connect on Zoom and see this presentation, it means that you are connected. And it means that the place where you are right now has an energy grid, an infrastructure that is distributing energy in the space around you. I also bet that the energy grid that is sustaining this online talk is detached from your view. You cannot see it because you are located in a different space compared to the infrastructure, the energy grids that is supplying electricity to the spaces that you are inhabiting. So in this case, infrastructure is detached from the human experience. In comparison, urban AI is a more visible socio-technical phenomenon, in the sense that in urbanism, we share the same spaces where a number of artificial intelligences are acting. For example, we can think about autonomous vehicles, and you can look at this picture. This picture was taken in West Kowloon, which is one of the most popular parts of Hong Kong. And as you know, Hong Kong is one of the most dense cities in the world. And so you can see here that we have an autonomous car, an autonomous vehicle, an AI that is operating in a space that is the same space that we humans are experiencing. And there is no way that this AI can avoid human encounters. AIs and humans are sharing the exact same space. Or another example, you can think about a different range of service robots. In this case, we have a robot that is operating at a restaurant. sharing foods. And again, the robot is not detached from the space of humans. It is, operating next to us, to the point that in the picture that you're looking at, the presence of the robot is so taken for granted that no one is even looking at it. Or you can think about, even more intimate spatial relations. The case of AIs such as Alexa that resides in the domestic spaces of so many people nowadays. So, the most intimate spaces that we can think of, our homes are full of AIs such as Alexa. The third aspect that we're going to look at is about agency. And this is a very, very important aspect, because we can see another clear distinction between smart and AI urbanism. In smart urbanism, technology repeats the same actions over and over. And so the actions of smart technologies are characterized by repetition. And they are, very much predictable in the sense that you can tell what's going to happen next. For example, if there is a sensor in your room that is supposed to switch the light on the moment it senses motion in the room, you know that the moment someone enters your room, that sensor is going to activate and it's going to switch the light on. That sensor is not going to think about whether or not the light should be switched on or off. It's going to always switch the light on the moment it senses motion in that space. And so always in the sense that it's repeating the same action over and over. In contrast, urban AI is becoming more and more autonomous, deciding the course of its actions with little or no supervision. You can think about, again, an autonomous car. We are going to choose the destination, the final destination, the moment we decide to deploy an autonomous car to go from A to B. But the direction, the course, the trajectory, that is something that AI is going to decide. And it's not going to be fixed. It's not going to be the same trajectory if we use it today, tomorrow, or next week. It's always going to change depending on how traffic is going to change, depending on how the weather is going to change, in a way that becomes unpredictable. And this is quite relevant from an ethical point of view, because de facto AI is making important ethical decisions in the city that in traditional smart city initiatives were firmly in the hands of humans. For example, we talked about Palantir. This is an AI operating in the city that is deciding who is likely to commit a crime. And on the basis of that decision, some citizens are going to be targeted by the police. Or you can think about algorithms operating in the housing markets that are going to decide if you're worthy of a mortgage, if you're trustworthy enough to get a mortgage. These are ethical decisions because they impact on the life of citizens. And they also are underpinned by ethical assumptions and implications, because if you are, as an AI, determining that some citizens are potential criminals, there is a value judgment. You are assuming that those citizens are behaving in a way that is not correct. And so for the first time in the history of the city, we now have autonomous technologies that are acting in a way that has ethical implications. While in the traditional smart city, these ethical decisions were 100% decisions made exclusively by humans. And this leads me to the final point of our comparison, which is the discourse that animates AI urbanism, which I argue is significantly different compared to the discourse of smart urbanism. Smart cities were based upon a modernist ideal of control. So there is the idea of technology as a tool, technology as an instrument in the hands of urban planners, architects, policymakers, so human stakeholders that employ technology to shape urban spaces, to govern urban spaces, to control urban spaces. I argue that this discourse, this way of thinking about technology is no longer pertinent in cities where urban AI roams free as an autonomous agent, in cities where autonomous vehicles, algorithms, predictive technologies, robots are increasingly operating autonomously with little or no supervision. And their actions, they're not being steered directly by human stakeholders. But also there are, broader theoretical implications, because, we're talking about not simply AIs that are serving food at the restaurants or AIs that are transporting people in the city. We're talking about AIs that are deployed in urban governance and issues of surveillance, policing are, important aspects of governance. Also, artificial intelligence is employed in the planning process. So this is signaling, in my opinion, the emergence of a post-human condition in which humans are not the sole builders and governors of cities anymore. So in this case, post-humanism is not about humans disappearing or being replaced. It is about thinking about urban development and governance in a non-anthropocentric way. It means that we're not at the top of the pyramids anymore. We're not the only agents that are shaping the processes of urban development and governance. That these days, I'd argue, we are sharing the stage with emerging artificial intelligences. As I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, the relationship between the city and AI, between AI and the city, is one of co-constitution, in the sense that these two entities, artificial intelligences on the one hand, and then cities as living entities, multifaceted, complex entities, they are influencing each other's developments. And we can see how the city is influencing AI developments, mostly around three aspects. The first one, urban communities and urban authorities can and often do shape the diffusion of AI in the city in many different ways. And in the case of San Francisco, I believe is particularly interesting. In 2022, in San Francisco, citizens began to protest against the deployment of AI in charge of policing, of police robots. So we're talking about weaponized artificial intelligences in charge of maintaining order in the city. Now, in 2022, as I was saying, citizens reacted against this type of AI and protested against its deployment. And back then, we're talking about a couple of years ago, it's a very, very recent phenomenon. Urban authorities, city managers, they listened to the protests of local citizens and decided to remove this type of AI from the governance of San Francisco. So that's an example of how citizens can actively shape the course of AI developments and deployments in the cities that they experience. So citizens play a key role here. But also, cities affect the very nature of the intelligence of AI. AIs make mistakes, and in so doing they learn, they change, and they adapt to the urban environments. We should not be thinking of AIs as stable intelligences that are designed, that are implemented, and then that's it. They are finite products. Not at all, because if you create an autonomous car, if you create a robot, and then you place these artificial intelligences in the city, they're going to learn, they're going to make mistakes, they're going to adapt to the surrounding urban environments. And so that's a process of learning that is very much based on space and that is influencing the intelligence of AI. And I would also say that it is the same process whereby we humans learn and develop our own intelligence. And you can think, for example, about your own childhood. And when you were a kid, it's not that your intelligence was fully mature, fully developed from day one. Not at all. Your intelligence developed as you began to experience space, looking around, touching, engaging with objects and other people in space. And so the very same logic applies to the development of artificial intelligence. And so the city is not simply a playground for AI. It is one of the determinants of its very intelligence. And my final point is about the actual intelligence of AI in practice. So intended as the capacity to develop knowledge and to use knowledge to act spatially. So this is something that is very much shaped by the urban context where AI operates. For example, if we think about the housing markets, there are a number of studies that are showing how in many American cities, algorithms are operating in a way that is racist, that is sexist, that is penalizing already disadvantaged urban minorities. So these are algorithms that are shaping the housing markets in many American cities, and similar dynamics can be observed in Europe as well. Now, the moment these algorithms penalize already marginalized urban minorities, they're not doing so because they are malignant intelligences. They're not doing so because they want to harm people. They're doing so because they are absorbing the local urban context. And in a number of American cities, as in many European cities, the context is the neoliberal context, where we can see clear practices of neoliberal urbanism that penalize minorities, um, that is reproducing issues of social injustice. And so in these cases, AI is replicating exactly what has been happening in the urban context for many years. And so that's another example of how the city, with its social, political, cultural, and economic context, shapes the development and the operation of artificial intelligence. There are many, many, many ways through which AI influences the city and the city influences AI. And I hope that this presentation trigger your interest in this very complex and delicate relationship. And if you want to find out more, I invite you to check out our new book called Artificial Intelligence and the City, Urbanistic Perspectives on AI, edited by myself and my colleagues and friends, Federico Caprotti, Matthew Cook, Andrew Carvonen, Pauline McGurk, and Simon Marvin. The book was published very recently, a couple of months ago, and you can get it from many, many different places, but my advice would be to check out the publisher's website, routledge.com, and you can use these discount codes AFL04 to get 20% off price and free delivery. I hope that you enjoy this talk. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I can't wait to hear your questions and to engage with you in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cugurullo. It was a very fantastic talk. I'll wait to see if there is any questions from the audience.
Sure. Thank you.
Does anyone have? Okay, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was awesome. Just a quick question, and this is kind of broad, but I guess I'm curious, as researchers ourselves, what is the ethical standpoint I guess we should be trying to take in looking to govern some of these models that do impact societies and cities? On top of that, also, how do we make sure that we are aligning ourselves and are aligning these models with protecting society and humanity's intent? Just curious, kind of your opinion, anything along those lines?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aaron, for these important questions. These are indeed urgent matters that we as urbanists we have to deal with as soon as possible, because we're talking about technologies, AI technologies that are already deeply shaping the city socially, economically, politically, environmentally. In relation to your first question, I think that as researchers, we have to be critical. We have to look at different AIs in the way they operate in different urban contexts. One of the points that we're making in the book is that you can have the same AI, but then the moment you integrate the same technology into different cities, you're going to get different results. And so we need to look at geographical differences across spaces and scales. And I think that we had to be ready to recognize that if we want to achieve sustainability in the city, in some instances, AI might not be the ideal solution, particularly in terms of urban planning, urban design, urban governance. I think it's important to recognize that there are a lot of other solutions beyond AI that, as we speak, can be much more sustainable environmentally, socially, and economically. So when I say that we should be critical, what I mean is that we should be questioning in the very first place whether we need to have multiple AIs in our cities. And then in relation to your second question, which is about alignment, so how we can align the development of urban AI with the needs of citizens, the needs of the city, then I strongly believe that as urbanists, as geographers, as practitioners, we should not be developing top-down solutions. I believe that it's really important to engage with citizens. I've been doing a lot of research on the so-called alignment problem these days, and I don't believe that we are getting this right, because when I look at the literature, when I look at how the alignment problem is usually approached, it's either in a technical manner by developing more refined algorithms, or in a philosophical manner by developing ethical guidelines. But what I believe is that the alignment problem is a political problem. It is about how AIs, plural, should be operating in different spaces where different people are living. So it is not just a matter of what computer scientists, philosophers, architects, and planners believe is correct. It is really down to what citizens want for the cities that they inhabit. And so the alignment problem, from an urbanistic point of view, in my opinion, should be approached through governance and processes of participatory planning.
Interesting. No, that's super great. I appreciate your opinion. Just a quick follow-up. Do you think then there can be a unionized solution? I mean, across a country, across a state, with so much political variation and bias and influence in, how these systems are deployed?
At the moment, I would be very pessimistic about that. But for me, looking at the city brings up a lot of optimism, because, of course, AI development is taking place at different scales, and one of these scales is the national scale, and so we have states that are launching AI national agendas. They are also engaging in different forms of competition, and as we all know, there are rivalries internationally when it comes to AI, and the tensions between the US and China in relation to the export of chips for the development of AI is, well, it's a very, very clear case of an international situation that it's very difficult to control. It's very difficult to find common ground in this large scale context. But when we look at the city, which is a fairly big system, but is way more manageable compared to states, regions, and of course the planet as a whole. I think that within the city, it is certainly possible to find common grounds, to bring people together. And again, the case of San Francisco is a good one. We can see how people spontaneously come together, share ideas, and they develop an homogeneous understanding of AI, an homogeneous attitudes towards certain forms of AI that they don't want to see in their city. Police robots being an example in the case of San Francisco. We can see in cities like Barcelona that the local municipality is deploying AI platforms in a way that is, to some extent democratic, in as much as it engages with citizens to understand their opinions about urban developments. So going back to the essence of your question, I think that rather than focusing on what is happening at the national scale, because there is a little bit to outside our field of expertise and action as planners, urbanists, and geographers, we should be focusing on the city, where indeed concrete democratic participatory actions are and can take place more and more.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Alia also wants to throw out another question. Alia, would you?
Yeah. First, thank you so much for your interesting presentations. If I understood correctly, you mentioned some differences between a smart urbanism and AI urbanism in three a scope of function, presence, and agency. And my question is that how do you think AI can change some from an epistemic viewpoint, can change some traditional concept that we have in urbanism? For example, change the concept of city, change the concept of citizenship, the concept of representation, or more basically, can AI play the role in social contract, the traditional social contract theory that we have between citizens and governments, or even between intergovernmental entities? What do you think about this epistemic, possible epistemic change that AI can do?
That's a great question in every sense, because it's also big in terms of its scope, and so there is a lot to say. In essence, I fully agree with you, and actually this is a topic that I've already written about in my first monograph called Frankenstein Urbanism. I talk about a phenomenon that I refer to as the end of the city in the age of AI. And I talk about the end of the city not in physical terms, so the destruction of urban spaces, but in more conceptual terms. So what it means to understand cities, what is the notion of city in the age of artificial intelligences. And it's a really big topic, but what I'm arguing in my first book is that cities are essentially social systems. They're, they've been populated by human intelligences since the very, very beginning of civilization. And also they've been designed, planned, and governed by humans to sustain human needs. And what I think is happening is that, well, first, the cities are now populated by an increasing number of non-biological intelligences, but also they're being designed and governed in parts, although this is a growing phenomenon, by artificial intelligences. And in countries like China, we have large-scale AIs called city brains, and a city brain is a large AI platform that is in charge of urban governance, planning, and in de facto, governing the city. And so this practice, in my opinion, goes against the traditional definition, the traditional understanding of the city. So indeed, it is a time in which we're looking at urban changes, practical urban changes that are having repercussions in the very concepts that we employ to make sense of the urban. And similar dynamics can be observed in relation to the practice and then the notion of citizenship. And I've been writing about the new city that Saudi Arabia is building in the Tabuk region, the Line, the new linear city in the northwest of the Arabian Peninsula. And the plan of the developers is to grant citizenship to robots. And in fact, in 2017, so that is already a few years ago, the Saudi government granted citizenship to a robot named Sophia, which is a fact, something that happened and that to some extent changed the very constitution of Saudi Arabia. But it is also changing that the way we think about citizenship. The moment we have non-human intelligences that share our spaces as citizens. I think that's part of what I was hinting at in my presentation, the shift towards post-humanism in urban governance and urban developments. So very, very fascinating topic that I hope we have another chance to discuss in more detail. But for now, that's my answer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Interesting.
Very welcome.
Very interesting. I think we are ready at the time to wrap up. So, Dr. Cugurullo, if possible, could you stay for a minute after the talk? Talia wants to have some quick conversation with you.
Of course. Yeah, I'll stick around. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this talk. It was big, big pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Cugurullo, for the wonderful talk today. And yeah, I will post your video on the website soon. And thank you, everyone, for joining the talk today. And I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead. Bye.